Right. No. Okay. So buying time on that subject. You're here in America. You're doing the rounds. You're talking about Syria. You're working with a Syrian group. Ahmed Ashara was in New York, of course. He addressed the General Assembly for the first time, and he met with U.S. officials. And there is he gave a talk with General Petraeus, which a lot of people found slightly problematic or quite problematic. Do you think that we had a whole show on this, of course, and we talked about how Syria is in a very precarious position, and what else can he do? He needs to buy time, and then he needs to create some sort of space between himself and the designs of the Israelis. From where you're sitting now, do you think the same about Syria and Ahmed Ashara? And do you feel that the Israelis are finding ways and means to undermine him, despite what the Americans say about him?
I think that in general, Muslims and Israelis are aligned in terms of their criticism of Ahmed Ashara. The Israelis insist that he's lying, and the Muslims insist that he's lying. The Israelis insist that he's lying in that he wants peace. He doesn't. He wants 5-10 years to rebuild Syria and then put his hand with Erdogan and come after us.
Are you convinced of that?
The Muslims are saying he's lying and that he wants normalization with the Israelis and he wants to hold power. So Israelis and Muslims are the only two groups at this moment who are insisting that he's lying.
Yeah.
You said that the interview with Petraeus was problematic. When I saw the interview, I saw a general who had tried to get rid of Ahmed Ashara forced to interview him and call him Mr. President on the stage. I saw Ahmed Ashara tell Petraeus, Wama Adrak, tell Petraeus that you tried to come after me 25 years, your military efforts failed, I'm willing to handle this through dialogue. We don't need to fight no more. I heard Petraeus try to push normalization, and Ahmed Ashara push back and say, I'm not normalizing, we're not the same as the other countries that did it, but I'll discuss a ceasefire in the 1972 ceasefire agreement. The Israelis are saying we want normalization. He's saying I want a ceasefire agreement. And there's a reason why they are arguing over the terminology.
Yeah.
Normalization implies that Ahmed Ashara sees a future in the region in which Israel exists and that Israel is a part of the region. Yeah. Ceasefire implies that I have no energy right now to deal with you. You're not my priority. I want to rebuild Damascus, which has 2 hours of electricity a day. The Iranians and the Israelis have shared interest in Syria today. They both want to carve Syria into 4. I need to deal with the Iranians first. They're the more immediate threat. And therefore, I want a ceasefire with the Israelis. I'm telling you, Americans, I'm not going to do anything to them, not because I like the Israelis, but because I have no means to do so, and they're not my priority. That's not a defense of Ahmed Ashara. It's a logical conclusion of how he views his power there at this particular time. The third point, Ahmed Ashara went from hiding in a cave to standing in the United Nations and sitting with David Petraeus in New York, recognized internationally as the president of Syria. That's not a small thing. Fourthly, the Israelis tried to prevent Ahmed Ashara from coming to New York, insisting that he should not be recognized, that we shouldn't work with Damascus. Meaning the Israeli lobby against Syria at this moment is not as strong as the Zionists would like it to be.
Yeah.
That may be because of the concessions that Ahmed Ashara is making to the Americans. But what are these concessions that Ahmed Ashara is offering? Ahmed Ashara is telling the Americans that, and this doesn't happen under Harris, by the way. Under a Democrat, I don't think Ahmed Ashara comes to New York. This is a uniquely Trump phenomenon because under the Democrats, Israelis have their way in foreign policy in Syria. There was never a discussion on the part of the Democrats about whether they should leave Syria. Obama flirted with it, but eventually ceded to CENTCOM. The only time there was a serious discussion about withdrawing from Syria was when Trump came to power. And the reason had nothing to do with American interests. Trump just said, why do I need to spend money for this? Erdogan says he can send in troops to keep the security. Why don't we just trust Erdogan, who's a NATO ally? Ahmed Ashara is telling the Americans, these are the concessions, that you're spending so much money on American troops in the northeast of Syria. You think you need to keep control of the oil. I'm not averse to trading oil with you. I'm not here to boycott you. You don't need to have your troops over there. Just let me send in my army. I'll work with the Turks. I'll keep the peace. I'll prevent ISIS and the terrorist activities from taking place over there. Why do you need to be there? And Trump says, actually, that's a good point. Why do I need to be there? The Israelis are saying, no, he wants you out so he can assert his control. Trump is saying, well, why does he have in control hurt American interests? The Israelis are saying, okay, but it hurts our interests. And Trump is saying, but how does it hurt American interests? And the Israelis are saying Israel is America. And Trump is saying, in Syria, not necessarily. Because when you guys go into Suwaidah and you cause a ruckus, I have to spend money and I got to go protect them and I got to send in troops and I got to go deal with terrorism threats again and the like. I don't understand Israel. Why don't just let the guy keep the country together and keep the Iranians out of it? Isn't that in your benefit? The point is, Ahmed al-Shara's presence, this is the fourth point, aside from talking to Petraeus there. The fourth point is that the Israeli lobby is failing to influence US policy with regards to Syria, which is why the Israelis are trying to force a status quo in Syria by which you have Hikmat al-Hijri, Suwaidah in the south. Let's force it into an autonomous region, or let's force a conflict between Damascus and between the Druze that makes the Americans come in to protect the Druze, and that way we force Trump into a conflict, like they tried with Iran, that he cannot extricate himself from. So I don't know how problematic necessarily that was. Somebody in one of the Q&A sessions when I was in Texas said to me, this is not the time to be talking about peace with the Israelis. My focus is not on whether he wants peace with the Israelis. My focus is, when Israel went to bomb Iran, which airspace did they use? Syria's airspace. Did the Israelis ask Syria? No. If they ask Syria, does Syria have the ability even to say yes or no? Does Syria have the means to prevent it? The reason Syria does not have the means to prevent it is because Russia and Iran destroyed it into oblivion. Syria is out of action. Somebody said no, but the Syrians should right now be taking a firm stance with regards to that. And again, I'm not justifying it. I'm saying let's go through these arguments. But that's the equivalent of trying to find frontline soldiers, but you don't find able men. You go to the hospital, you find those with broken legs, broken arms, and the like, and you tell them you need to now go fight on the front line. It's unreasonable to expect Syria to do so. Yeah. Which is why my point is not about whether what I think about Ahmed al-Shara or not. That's completely irrelevant. Because it doesn't matter who's in power in Damascus. Whoever rules Syria today rules over a broken country. Whoever rules over Syria today rules over a country that has no army. Or if they have an army, it's still not yet a professional army, which has no economy, which has no missiles, it has no anti-air missile. It doesn't have the capacity to do anything, which is why Erdogan and Ahmed al-Shara are lobbying the Americans and saying to the Americans, there's a 1972 ceasefire. It doesn't need to be normalization of ties. Listen, Trump, market it however you want. We will tell our people it's a ceasefire agreement because we want a ceasefire agreement. You go and tell the people it's a normalization. Who gives a damn? We know it's a ceasefire agreement. Muslims are saying, no, we need the Israelis to say it's a ceasefire agreement. And the Israelis are happy with that. They're like, for once, us and the Muslims are in the same camp. You know, we both don't like Ahmed al-Shara for this reason, because he wants a ceasefire. He wants peace in that regard. The Israelis don't want peace with Ahmed al-Shara. The Israelis are terrified that if Syria gets 5-10 years, it looks completely different. And Syria is not Tunisia. Syria is not Libya. Syria, historically, Zionists know history. Syria is the gateway to Palestine. If you allow a Syria to be free and allied with Turkey on top, and then coerce bin Salman, who realizes Syria is rebuilding itself, so he joins the bandwagon as well, that's the regime, the region completely changes. Add on top of that a wild card like Donald Trump, where you can't predict what he's going to do next. With Biden, at least he was a Zionist. With Trump, it's who offers him the best deal, which I think the Muslim world hasn't yet offered him a good deal. But I'm not praising Trump in that regard. And that's why I argue that Ahmed al-Shara being in New York is a huge win for the Syrians. It's a huge win against the Zionists who plan something different for Syria. That doesn't mean Ahmed al-Shara is good. I don't know what to make of him. I reserve my judgment on what Ahmed al-Shara. Not that I don't think he really cares about what I think of him, and I don't think Syrians are interested in what I think of Ahmed al-Shara. That's irrelevant. My point is, what are the Israelis terrified of? The reconstruction of Syria. Reconstruct Syria, it doesn't matter who leads it. Once it's reconstructed, the Israelis know the region doesn't look the same as it did 10 years ago.
Have you not thought about going to Syria yourself, Sami?
So I had a couple of invitations to go. And I was going to go check it out as other people did.
Yeah.
What made me hesitate was what happened to Abdurrahman Qardawi, to put it bluntly. He goes to the Umayyad Masjid, films himself. He criticized the Saudis and the UAE. In fairness, nothing happened to him in Syria. Like, absolutely nothing happened to him in Syria. He crossed the border into Lebanon, he was kidnapped. When he was kidnapped in Lebanon, he was deported to the UAE, and he's disappeared. That's nothing on Syria itself.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if the region yet is I'm not sure it's time yet to go and.
We need to keep you on our show so we don't.
But also sometimes it's like sometimes I say, I've set some Turkish friends of mine one day. They said to me, brother, we need to stand with Turkey. I said, yes, but I hope Erdogan never has any power to rule over me. They said, what do you mean? I said, I like him insofar as in the Kemalist, like the battle, for the re-Islamization. But I believe in a country of rule of law, not a country where somebody can waltz in and, change things as he wishes. So Erdogan is best loved from afar, not from up close. So I think maybe, I'm not applying this to Syria, but I think there's no need necessarily to rush to go to these countries at this moment in time. We pray, inshallah, that Allah looks after them and preserves them, that Allah protects them, inshallah. But, the world is not as, the world's it's more scary than it used to be.